off air. Oh, we're live. Well, first of all, thank you everyone for joining me on my first Liberty.me show, Washington Unmasked. Today we have our first guest, Austin Petersen. Austin and I worked together at FreedomWorks a couple years ago together, and he just has exciting news. He's running for president on the Libertarian Party. He also runs a website, the Libertarian Republic, and he does a lot of other cool stuff. So first, thank you for joining me, Austin.
Thanks for having me, Julie. Good to see you.
So let's get the first question out of the way. Are you old enough to run for president?
I am not old enough to run for president at my current age, but I will be 35 in February, which means that I'll be constitutionally eligible. You have to be old enough on the day that you take office, so you have to turn 35 by the time the day that you would have to take the oath. So I'll be 35 in time, yeah.
Okay, good. I kept seeing that all over the place. So I guess the most obvious question is, why do you want to run for president?
You know, it wasn't that I really wanted to run for president, Julie. It's that a lot of the people who follow me and follow probably a lot of people who follow you were like, there was so much depression in the movement where we had all of these numbers and we have all of this activism and opportunity available that feels like it's either not being taken advantage of or it's being wasted. And so many people were like, Austin, you know, why don't you do it, Leif Beaverson 2016. And then when I looked into it, I saw that, you know, the initial part of becoming a candidate is not too difficult. Of course, winning the presidency is extremely difficult. But I thought that maybe this would be my opportunity to show that I can be a leader and set a good example for libertarians to show like how we can bring more ideas out into the world and sort of champion these ideas. So I decided to do it because I saw an opportunity to present my unique voice and talents and bring my unique talents to the debate. And I hope I win. I'd love to win the nomination for the Libertarian Party, and I think I'd be a great president. But ultimately, you know, even in worst case scenario, even if I don't win the LP nomination, I'd still have a chance to go around the country and speak to people, which I'd love to do. And I would love to represent the Libertarian Party as their standard bearer. But I also think that in that chance that I might win the presidency, Julie, that I could be a good president. I wouldn't be the best president ever, maybe not as cool as Calvin Coolidge, but I would try and be that cool. And I would try and bring about real substance or reform for the issues that you and I care about.
So what do you say to other libertarians who say, like it or not, this is a two-party system, the Libertarian Party is a waste of time? How do you respond to that?
Well, I would remind them that the Republican Party was a third party at one time, and it was a party of ideas. And the Republican Party was put forth to advance a certain set of principles and ideas. They were an anti-slavery party, and that third party, won because they were a party of ideas. And so I think a lot of people see nowadays that the two-party system, such as it is, it doesn't work, and it's corrupt, and it doesn't advance anyone's ideas but the narrow interests of those two parties. And what does the Republican Party stand for anymore? Everybody knows that the Libertarian Party stands for liberty. And so I think it's an excellent platform for us to try and advance our ideas of individual freedom. And that's radical, and that's new, and that's difficult, and trust me, I've worked for the Libertarian Party, and I know what it's like to work on third-party campaigns. But you know what, Julie, sometimes you have to fight the good fight, you know, and do you think that there was a chance that the American revolutionaries thought they would lose? They did. They thought there was a chance that they would lose. But they thought that if they fought and they worked together and they believed in each other and themselves, that they could win a freer country. I think libertarians believe that same thing. I think that they believe that even though that the odds are stacked against them, I mean, George Washington fought and beat the mightiest army in the world. Do you think that the American libertarian movement can't match that challenge if we keep bringing these heroes, if we put these men on a pedestal, that we can't be as good or better than them? I think that's what our founding fathers wanted. And so I think that these kinds of challenges, while they are Herculean, it allows us the opportunity, Julie, to act like Prometheus and bring the fire down to man, with the fire of liberty, and to carry the torch. You know, that's why the Libertarian Party's motto is the torch of liberty. And I hope that I can fulfill that role up until the election.
So I believe you have endorsed Rand Paul. Would you still run if Rand Paul somehow wins the GOP nomination? Do you still endorse him? What's going on there?
Yeah, I like Rand. You know, the thing is, I think that a lot of times because of, like what you said earlier, the two-party system, people
Mhm.
get wrapped into that binary. It's like you can't support Rand Paul. You can't say anything nice about other candidates. I can say nice things about Ted Cruz. I can say nice things about Jim Webb. I can say nice things about whoever I want, okay? And so I like Rand Paul. I hope he wins. I hope he succeeds. But the thing that sort of made me lose a little bit of confidence was when he angled for the backup plan in Kentucky so he could run for Senate at the same time, which
Mhm.
made me think that perhaps he thinks there's a chance he might not win. And if that's the case, that's okay. Get the backup plan. But I'll be America's backup plan if Rand doesn't win, and I'll be there to carry the torch into the election and fight as hard as I can until November, until I can fight no more.
So I believe Gary Johnson is probably your opponent at this point. Gary Johnson has credentials. He was governor of New Mexico. How are you different than Gary Johnson?
Gary Johnson's a tremendous guy. He's a great spokesman for liberty. He's someone who I have tremendous respect for, and someone I actually look up to. And it's hard to put your resume up next to somebody like that and say, I think I could do better. But I do think I could, Julie. I think that I provide something unique. I think that if given the opportunity, that all of the major networks would be like, wow, who is this young, articulate spokesman who's not kooky and says radical things, but says them in ways that we find interesting, and maybe he's something got something new and exciting. So I don't want to talk down on Gary Johnson. I think that some of my qualities, I know he's got way stronger qualities than me in terms of experience and other things, you know, being the CEO of major companies. But I think that there's some other experiences that perhaps I'm better at that might work better if you understand that we have to fight against the regime, right, and against the system. Well, the tools that we can afford are things like media, right, and grassroots. And I believe that I can energize the grassroots and be better in the media, and that is really where we're going to be able to take a step forward and advance our ideas. That's why I think Gary Johnson's a great guy, but in terms of the tools that we actually have at our disposal, since we aren't millionaires like Donald Trump, those tools I specialize in, and that's why I presented a unique challenge to Gary.
Could you go a little bit more into that? What's your plan to reach non-libertarians?
Okay, non-libertarians. So can you specify what kinds of non-libertarians? Just like average.
Just average, independent people. How are you going to reach them? Because they might say, oh, Libertarian Party, that sounds kind of weird. What's your plan there?
Well, independents are actually the majority. It's Republicans and Democrats are the minority in terms of overall voters. Independents outweigh Republican and Democrat voters by I think, more than half. So those are the very important voters. I think a lot of times libertarians, their strategy is too focused on winning Republicans and Democrats away from their two parties, or trying to act like they're a third rump to the main parties. And so I think that it's important that we reach out to independent voters, and I would target them based on issues, Julie. You can't make a sweeping statement and just say, this is how I would get independent voters. But, you know, I'm actually very good at convincing people that libertarian ideas are right by doing the first thing, being a good listener. And what I would do is I would listen to independent voters. I would speak to them directly and say, you know, what is the issue that they care about? Find out if they're parents, you know, do they have issues with taxes? Do they care about gay marriage? Do they care about marijuana? And so I would ask questions and then listen. And when I find out what their issue is, I would find the libertarian angle on that. And I think I could bring independent voters in because I would be a good listener first and find the issues they care about and then campaign on those issues in order to win the vote.
More about issues, what would you say are your top 3 biggest issues and why?
Probably the term limits. I know that's something that you and I might disagree with there, but I do think that's a good check and balance on democracy. And I'd like to run on a campaign against the minimum wage, which may not be popular, but I'm going to couch it in terms of unemployment. And I'm also going to run on a national defense platform that would be mindful of American national security interests, but would not sacrifice our liberties or our Fourth Amendment rights, and also on a monetary reform platform that would be something that would offer the American people an option in their money system. So I would run on those types of planks, and I'm actually consulting with real experts, Julie. I'm not screwing around here. I'm speaking to national security experts and getting their input and advice on how to formulate a national security plan that is reductionary in terms of costs. So you remember the budget bill, the sequester that happened because everybody was freaking out because there were growth in spending. You know, they were gonna cut growth in spending. Well, if I was the president, I would demand a balanced budget that required there to be overall cuts in spending. And I would veto any bill that would offer me a budget that was not balanced. So I'll run on a balanced budget amendment as well, and I will, talk about things that I think libertarians care about, but the American people care about as well. And it's really a delicate balancing act, but I think there's ways to do it, Julie. I think there is a way for us to win some victories here. I'm the type of guy that likes to say, oh, well, I can't win that battle, but I'm going to fight that battle over here, and then I'm going to get in on the sideways. That's called flanking, and I learned these strategy and tactics from the best of the best. George Washington, I'm a martial artist. I read a lot of Bruce Lee and the philosophy of Sun Tzu. And libertarians can take these strategies and put them to good use. Matt Kibbe always talked about rules for radicals. Some of these tools we can put to good use. And we can't win this battle, but we can win that one. So I'll present a platform that I think will be a winning platform. And maybe even two of the major parties, if they get scared enough, if they start freaking out because the Libertarian starts rising in the polls, and the American people are like, well, we're going to start threatening these two parties, then maybe those two parties would have to say, oh my gosh, we're going to have to take on these issues, and maybe that would be a victory too.
Cool. I know you've made some pro-life statements in the past, and I believe the LP's official statement is pro-choice. Do you think that will hurt you?
Yes, I do. That's okay though, because you can't please everyone, and you shouldn't try. I would like to present to the American people a new way of thinking about abortion, and present to them something that's kind of maybe scary, a scary thought about abortion, a pro-life position it's a secular viewpoint on abortion. I've arrived at a position of pro-life because of logic and because of a hope for humanity and a love for life. Not because I think that I'll be punished in an afterlife, but because I think that I guess I'm sort of a nerd, a science fiction nerd, and I read a lot of Heinlein, and I'd love to see humankind become an interplanetary species. And so I think that we should encourage a culture of life, and that also means I'm against the death penalty. But I would like to articulate to the American people a new way of thinking about life in order for us to advance as a civilization, because I really do love humanity, and I'd like to see us flourish.
I like that statement, because every time I make a pro-life statement online, I'm always getting accused of, I have my Bible in someone's uterus, and I don't even talk about religion in the frame of abortion. So that's really good. Let's see. I know some libertarians have been critical of you on foreign policy. They've called you, hawkish, neocon, how it goes. I was wondering if you could clarify what exactly your foreign policy is, how would you handle ISIS, stuff like that.
Right. So in general, I think the presidency itself is not a libertarian office. I mean, it's got so much power that simply on taking the oath of office, you are presented with challenges that put you in situations that are what you call like a catch-22, right? Mm-hmm. So a lot of times we're presented with ethical and moral challenges where it's sort of a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. And in terms of my foreign policy, I would always seek the most libertarian option of that, with the understanding that if you are too involved, it can become central planning. And so I wouldn't want to create a new Department of Homeland Security or think that a bureaucracy is going to solve our problems. As a matter of fact, Julie, when it comes to foreign policy, I'm going to talk about something that's going to scare a lot of people, but I'm going to try and make it not scary, which is what Congressman Ron Paul proposed after 9/11, which was the letters of marque and reprisal. And what I'm hoping I can do is to convince the American people that maybe it's time for us to look at the Constitution and to perhaps look at new ways to fight terrorism. And certainly when it comes to dealing with ISIS or any foreign conflict, the only way that really the president should be involved is if the Congress were to pass a resolution. And so the president can't act unilaterally when it comes to foreign policy. He can only act unilaterally for a short time, according to the War Powers Act, and he must do so only if there is imminent threat. And would I act to protect the citizens of the United States from an imminent threat? Yes, I would. But would I look to do nation building, long-term, militaristic adventures overseas? Would I drone people without due process? Absolutely not. I believe no beheadings without due process. And so, in terms of foreign policy, I actually think, Julie, that I would be a great president because I think that I could actually get along with people. Maybe people don't like me online, but in person I'm actually pretty nice. And not everyone overseas will have the best of intentions. They won't care that I'm nice. But you know what? Sometimes people react ignorant and belligerent and just rah, 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 America the best, America number one. But sometimes you got to go to France and eat a little cheese. Sometimes you got to go to the Middle East and break some naan and break some bread with the people that you disagree with. So I would seek to establish new positive friendships with people, allies overseas, and I would work to protect American national interests. But I would do it like Ronald Reagan, in a sense, that it would be more of it would be peace through strength, and I would provide a positive image of the United States. You have to negotiate from a position of strength, but I would look for a way to reduce our expenditures on the military, for us to cut down on boots on the ground, and for us to rein in our intelligence agencies so that they are properly aligned with the constitutional mandate that I will uphold as president.
What do you say to libertarians who say Austin Petersen, he's just trolling, he's not serious about this, he just wants attention, he's not serious about running for president? What do you say to those people?
I guess wait and see. I mean, it's I've got until May to win the delegates. Right now, I mean, if you think I'm not serious, you should call the 50 LP state delegate chairs right now, because I've been calling them and expressing them how serious I am about my candidacy. And I'll be meeting with the head of the LP, the National, in Washington, D.C. this weekend in order to make sure that I'm abiding by proper election rules. I'm putting together a campaign team. And I'm very serious, Julie. I think that I could do a good job. And I hope that I can earn your support. I know I don't expect it. I don't actually expect anybody's support. What I really hope is that I can earn it. And gosh darn it, even if I lose, Julie, I just want to set a good example. And I think this is a good opportunity for me to step up and show people how it's done. I've been behind the scenes for a long time, and I think that now might be a good time for me to step out and do a little tap dance and show them how us musical theater majors can do.
Why are you running for president and not a local office?
That's a good question. I might run for local office one day if I don't win the presidency. But quite frankly, I think that I'm worried that what's going to happen is that between February, if for some reason Rand doesn't win, that we would have a sort of a dark time, and that from May to November we would have a libertarian candidate, possibly not Gary Johnson, who is not out there sort of making trouble for the big government status. And so I chose to run for president instead of local office because, well, there really aren't a lot of great candidates out there. There are some good candidates, but I'm unique. There's nobody like me. There's nobody who has my experience, and I think that I can get people excited, and it would be fun. And that's really what we should be doing. Who wants a revolution without dancing? So I'll bring something new and unique to the presidential race. And I don't think the media is going to be able to ignore me, Julie. I think that they're going to be kind of surprised when they see if I win the nomination. They'll be like, "What the heck? Libertarians are actually serious now? They do want to win the White House. They're sending somebody who can actually speak and articulate these ideas in a way that doesn't freak people out and actually gets people excited about real change."
Let's see. What do you think is the biggest criticism of you, and how do you deal with that? I know we sound like a job interview here, but...
I know, right? Biggest criticisms. That's tough. And I'm trying not to think of the ones where it's like a negative that you turn into a positive.
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, there's the obvious ones, that maybe I'm a loudmouth, right? That perhaps maybe I should be more humble. But the reason why I inherently reject that is because I am sort of an Ayn Randian. I'm one of those libertarians who does like Ayn Rand, who doesn't run away from her. And one of her famous quotes is, ego is the fountainhead of all human progress. And so I've always sort of kind of pictured myself as a romantic character from one of Ayn Rand's books. And so I think that I get in trouble because I do not apologize for striving to be great and to have a strong ego that I can use as a bulwark against those who would seek to squash you. Everybody wants to take a shot at number one. If there's anything I've learned in life, Julie, it's that if you try and accomplish anything, or if you try and win a contest or something like that, you've got an automatic hater constituency, guaranteed, automatic. Now, I said I would be trying to be a listener to those voters, but at some point, when someone is trying to grind you down, Julie, you know this as a basic civic activism from Political School 101. If somebody's wasting your time, hating on you, and they don't have your best interests at heart, well, then why are you worried about what they have to say? There are probably a lot of criticisms, but I sure as hell am not going to put them out there for you guys. You guys can dig them for yourself. And if you don't want to support my campaign, well, that's your loss, because I think it'd be great if we could do something special.
I know I saw you made a statement about the Tea Party and Donald Trump. What do you think about all these Tea Party leaders endorsing Donald Trump? What's going on here?
I'm very angry, Julie, because the Tea Party, as it started, was a fiscal conservative movement that was broad so that we could all be united under this one set of ideas, fiscal conservatism, overturning Obamacare. But then those paleo-conservatives and those conservatives think they know something about immigration, and they started talking now all their rallies about immigration and about economics of immigration, which they don't seem to have a grasp on. They need to read their free market economists. They'll tout their heroes like Milton Friedman, and they'll say, oh, well, Milton Friedman said this about immigration. I'm like, yeah, he actually favored illegal immigration, if you didn't know that. And then they're like, well, we love Ronald Reagan, but Ronald Reagan gave a lot of amnesty to a lot of people. And so I think conservatism, unfortunately, what has happened is that the conservative populism has taken over, Julie, and that it's no longer, it's not a Tea Party of fiscal conservatism whatsoever anymore. It's about white identity politics. And that is, to me, I think, a running off of the rails of what the Tea Party was supposed to be. I'm just not a tribalist, Julie. I'm proud of my heritage, but like being white isn't what defines me. And I can jive with any tribe. You know what I mean? I can hang out with the pot smoking hippies on one day, and then wear my tie-dye shirt, and the next day I can hang on Capitol Hill with all the the elite Starbucks crowd or whatever. But I think that it becomes what the Trump movement shows is that the Tea Party has become a movement of white identity politics and a fear of the other, and it becomes that populism like Williams Jennings Bryan, where men can predict all of this. Democracy is the art of trying to run the country from the monkey cage. And what's happened is I think that people have this natural rage at Congress, and which is, to me, makes perfect sense. But like so many Democrats, and the Democrats behind Bernie Sanders, they diagnose the problem correctly, but their cure would kill the patient. And so free markets and economic conservatism, that is what the Tea Party should have been. But what's rallying behind Trump is not libertarianism. It's not even fiscal conservatism. It's just identity politics and tribalism. And frankly, I have to run away from it.
Could you go more into your thoughts on immigration? How would you handle the issue?
Yeah, I would, Petersen, S-E-N, I'm Danish. Ja, super. My family came over to Ellis Island. They had a security check, a disease check, and they were in. It's just funny that conservatives always talking about free. They talk about free markets this and free markets that, but they don't believe in a free market in labor, that's for sure. And I mean, the big dirty secret in Washington, D.C. is that the establishment Republicans, Jeb Bush does kind of agree with us on immigration. Did you know that? I mean, the establishment Republicans, it's like this. Republicans are never going to do, and Democrats are never going to do anything about immigration because Republicans want the labor and Democrats want the votes. However, I think that the problem the Republican Party has with immigration is not simply that Mexicans are going to run over the border and vote Democrat. They're only going to do that because when they run over the border, you're trying to stop them from doing an honest day's work, and you're being racist. So maybe if you weren't being racist and you would allow them to work for whatever wage they'd set, they might vote Republican. But guess what? Too late now because I'm running, and I'm going to get all the Hispanic votes. Watch me.
So are you saying that we should let the Syrian people in, the refugees, even if they're Muslims? Should we let them in?
Yeah, I do. I think that everybody has to have a security check and like a background check, and everybody has to have a disease check. Otherwise, unless you are committing a crime, I mean, really, what are we worried about here? We took in a lot of refugees from Vietnam, and we've taken in a lot of refugees in other time periods. I don't see anything particularly special about Muslims that we need to necessarily, to look at. I mean, if you want to talk about Islam or religion, that's a separate issue. But in terms of immigration, no, I don't believe in immigration quotas. Otherwise, should we have had immigration quotas when the Jews were trying to flee Europe? So what is the difference if they're Muslims, if they're trying to flee the radical Muslims? If they're fleeing radical Muslims, they're probably not radical Muslims. However, we can find that out simply by doing a security check, disease check. Ellis Island, you're done, boom, the economy gets boosted.
All right, so you told me to be tough on you in our messages.
Bring it.
What about people who look at your website and say, Austin Petersen, he's anti-feminist, he's anti-women, this is why libertarians can't reach women, this is why they aren't libertarians. What is your response to that?
Great question. That's a good question. Now, women, boy, we could really use some more women up in here. In terms of feminism, I don't want to try and get into the weeds too much. There are a lot of different kinds of feminism. There's about 13 different schools of feminism, and I think that feminism as a social movement is similar to the anti-slavery movement, in that it began with the best of intentions, and it accomplished wonderful things. But then, when a movement becomes institutionalized, like we all know, the people who are rent-seeking, the people who are collecting money for their cause, they don't want to lose their jobs. And I think that feminism has become a bit of a make-work job program for the left, and that social justice warriors, who are the perpetually outraged crowd, they're the sort of the modern-day Jacobins of the French Revolution, always looking for a new hanging victim, someone to exercise their rage at. And so when it comes to feminists, I think that we need to be specific about what type of feminism we're talking about here. Is feminism needed in the world today? Absolutely. You should go to Saudi Arabia and to some of these Middle Eastern countries where feminism is needed. In the United States, I'm not sure that feminism is necessarily still needed. I would have to look at that on a case-by-case basis. But from what I'm seeing right now, it appears that feminism's focus is misplaced. And there's real criticisms of there. And what's the point of running for president if you can't offer some critiques and some criticism and try and reform? I mean, some things are going to have to change, And modern feminism, with its sort of burn the heretic kind of movement, I think it's gone off the rails.
All right, so we're about a half hour in. I'm going to see if there's anyone in the room who has any questions for you. Let's see. And in the meantime, could you just give your 1-minute elevator speech on why people should vote for you? Sure.
So there's two different ways you can vote for me. You can register as a libertarian in your state, and you can vote for me at the delegation. You can become a delegate, which is an important part of this process. And then you can also vote for me for president if I make it onto the ballot. But I think that you should vote for me because it would show the American people that libertarianism is growing up, but it's still a young movement. and that young people have tremendously good ideas about how the future of America should be, and that a vote for Austin Petersen, a vote for Leif Petersen is a vote for liberty. And so I would hope that people would support me and vote for me, and do so because they care about people will believe that I really am serious about what I'm saying here. This is not a joke. This is not a troll. This is about serious issues that affect people, and I will promise to take them very seriously and to be a good representative.
So we have a couple questions. The first question is, how would you deal with North Korea and Iran?
Wow. Well, let's look at this from a historic perspective. So the United States has, obviously we have a history of intervention in Iran. There's some historical conflict there. Unfortunately, I think that what happens is that there's never a wrapping down of aggression with some of these countries that we have historic hostilities with. So Iran has a very liberal youth movement, and so there's opportunity for reform in Iran. And if you look at the new the president of Iran, Hassan Rouhani, he's actually much more liberal than his predecessor, Ahmadinejad. And so when I look at the Iran deal, I see some actual evidence of positive reform towards more liberal policies than they have in the past. Of course, the Ayatollahs are not liberal in any sense, and they do have total control. And they do engage in acts of cyber terrorism. And so there does have to be some sort of countermeasures for us to protect ourselves against Iran. But I would open up new rounds of talks. I would look for opportunities for us to divest ourselves of hostilities and aggression with Iran, with the note that that you have to keep your friends close and your enemies closer. And so I would think that there would be diplomatic opportunities in Iran. What's funny, Julie, is that all these conservatives, they talk about national security and ISIS and how the threat of Islamic terrorism is going to kill us all. Well, think about it this way. Everything's pretty relative in terms of national security, in terms of actual threats. When it comes to Iran and the threat that they probably pose a greater existential threat than North Korea. But in Iran is more conservative than ISIS. Actually, Iran is an enemy of ISIS. And so when it comes to the Iran deal, so many conservatives opposed the Iran deal, but that gave us one of our greatest, that would have made us allies with Iran against ISIS. And so here's the thing. Conservatives are always like, well, we're going to use enemy of my enemy as a friend all the time because they're constantly funding, these terrorist groups and all this stuff. Oh, so it's okay for you guys to use that strategy, but when libertarians say let's have a deal and we'll use Iran as a buffer against ISIS, well, then it's not okay because they have a special interest, Julie. They have a special interest there in the Middle East, and I think that it doesn't always have to do with American national security, but it has to do with perhaps their very sectarian interest in the region. And so I would look for opportunities for reform. When it comes to North Korea, operationally, they don't have the ability to use a nuke against the United States, but they do threaten it frequently. And, if somebody makes a threat, you do have to sort of, kind of perk your ears up. And if somebody points a gun at you, you do have a right to sort of point one back and say, hey, buddy, watch yourself. But when it comes to North Korea, I don't see them as an existential threat. They simply want the South Korean peninsula to be restored to a full peninsula, and that would be horrible for liberty. And so I would hope that that wouldn't happen, and I would look for ways to do that while still not placing an undue burden on the American taxpayer or our national security.
So we have a couple more questions. What government departments would you eliminate?
Oh boy! Wow, you got all night. How about the Department of Parks? We should totally privatize it. You pay a quarter, look at a duck. You put in another quarter, sit on a park bench. But no, the national parks are probably one of the last things that I would eliminate. But I would definitely look at the Department of the Interior. I would definitely look at the Federal Reserve and the Fed. Of course, the president can't just outlaw things and just shut down institutions. The Congress has to act, and so I would work with Congress to do so because I would not be a dictator. But yeah, the Federal Reserve, if I could, and I would do that by abolishing legal tender laws. I would force competition into the system there if possible. But I would also look to, I mean, gosh, what else? There's so many redundancies right now. I could do the Department of Education. That would be fantastic. I would work with the Congress to do that. But you know what I would do, Julie, because I'm always just a pragmatic thinker, I would find the issues that the American people are overwhelmingly in support of, and then I would find all the Congress members who support that institute, like abolishing that institution, and I would work my way down from there. So can I abolish the Federal Reserve? No. Can I introduce legalization of currency laws, like abolishing legal tender? Can I do that? Yep. Would I do it? Yep. Did we just become best friends? Yep. Libertarians, if you understand how this process works, it's not just about which departments would you eliminate, but how would you do it? A president can't do it by fiat, because again, I wouldn't be a dictator. But I could sit here all night and rattle them off for you. But I'm not like Rick Perry. You know, I'm not forgetting. I'm just trying to explain that it doesn't quite work that way in terms of democratic processes. Just like that's gone.
Next question is about your dollar sign. Are you going to wear that everywhere?
No, I probably won't wear it everywhere. I will wear it to lots of places, and I think to me it represents it. First of all, the dollar sign are the letters U and S, which means United States. I am running for president of America, so I do think this represents the United States, and it represents. I think capitalism represents freedom. And I'll articulate that to the people of the United States unapologetically. I might not wear it to a Bernie Sanders rally if I and convince them that they need to come over to our hang out with our guys, or maybe if I go to a Black Lives Matter conference, which I actually am working with some Black Lives Matter activists to hold some summits with libertarians. So I might not wear that there because they might see that as just deliberately provocative. But I don't mind being a little provocative, so if I think that it merits it, I will. And on national television, heck yeah, I will, and I'll do it proudly because I think it's a cool button.
Mm-hmm. So there are some libertarians who either think you're not libertarian enough, or they think voting's aggression or a waste of time. How do you reach those people?
I don't think you should. I think that bye-bye. You can't please everyone, and you shouldn't try. The thing is you can waste your entire day. I've learned this from activism. I used to run the LP booths all over the country and go to the events, and there are some guys that will sit there and talk to you for 12 hours about minutiae philosophy, and they're never going to support you. They're never going to vote for you. They're not going to do anything for you. So you just have to know when someone's not going to be an ally. And there are a lot of people who are my declared sworn enemy. Do I need to reach out to those people? Probably no. What do I need to do? Find people who might support me and cancel out their vote. And I plan on going out there and finding new blood, growing the party, and finding people who will support my candidacy. And, haters gonna hate. It's
a good song. Okay, another question. What is the most concerning part of the current Republican primary candidates to you? What are you most concerned about?
Well, Donald Trump, specifically. I fear that because of the Tea Party support behind him, because of the laser-like focus on an issue to which it would be detrimental to freedom if Donald Trump was elected, that being immigration. Also, in terms of free trade, the Donald Trump stands opposed to the most basic libertarian concepts that we champion. He stands against free markets and against free people, against the free movement of people. So to me, I'm most concerned about Donald Trump. I'm not as concerned about the rise of Ben Carson because he's an actual intellectual. And while he's a conservative, not a libertarian, and I think he says dumb stuff, I think that would be a much wiser choice for the Republican Party, simply because even if I don't agree with him on quite a few issues, and I would run against him in order to highlight the issues of areas of difference. I mean, the best case scenario, Julie, is if Jeb Bush or Donald Trump wins, because then I'm really going to kick some butt. But I don't want that for America. I want America to have a better, freer country, and I think that the Republican Party, if they really, truly want to present something new and unique and something that really resonates with their core principles, they should choose Rand Paul. But what really drives me on is the rhetoric that I hear coming from Trump and his supporters, because, Julie, these were our friends and allies just 3, 4, or 5 years ago at the Tea Party rallies here in Washington, D.C., and now they've betrayed the legacy of limited government that we've all worked for. I mean, have you seen how Glenn Beck has reacted to Donald Trump? Not good. And I think that maybe there's an ally there. Then I know libertarians don't like Glenn Beck, but he's got a lot of things to say, and he doesn't like Donald Trump. So, there may be an opportunity for some new coalitions, Julie, some real limited government fiscal conservative coalitions, and some libertarian coalitions that can occur outside of what's happening in the Republican Party right now. And maybe that needs to happen.
Someone is curious about your campaign logo. Do you have one yet?
So I have a couple of unofficial logos. Somebody, as soon as they heard that I was gonna, run, they created a quick one that had like an AR-15 with a pot logo and like my dollar symbol on it, which was pretty hilarious and awesome. Straight out of 1776. That's the unofficial logo. Right now, the official logo is just Petersen. But, we're going to make it fun. We're going to have stuff for the kids, and we're going to have stuff for the adults. So we'll have some clean stuff that you can put in your yard sign and not offend anybody, and we'll have a flag that you can wave out your window on the Upper East Side or Lower East Side of Manhattan and be like, drugs and drugs and sex and drugs and rock and roll. But everybody's got to feel like they're included. So, an official logo right now, I can't say I have one yet, but we do have some hashtags. Why not? Austin Petersen 2016 hashtag, Leaf Beaverson 2016, and also Leave Me Alone 2016, because the kind of where the joke is for the campaign is taking over the government and leaving everyone alone. So we'll kind of put that, Leave Me Alone 2016. So we've got some hashtags and we're getting it all together. The good news is that I have time. The convention is until May, and so I'm putting everything together bit by bit, but I think you're going to be excited and surprised to see what I'll be able to come up with, Julie. You know that I'm sneaky.
Next question. Do you support mandatory vaccines?
No. No, I don't support mandatory vaccines because I think that breaking the blood barrier of someone's body is the most basic human right. You have a right to bodily integrity. And so I think that it is reasonable to say that you can't attend a school, and I do think that if you are someone who is so strictly against vaccines that you refuse to vaccinate your children, you should have that right to do so, but that libertarianism does mean personal responsibility. So there would be restrictions, like perhaps if an outbreak were to occur, that perhaps there might be measures like quarantine measures that could come into play for people who have not been vaccinated. And that's because if you believe in a very, 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 very strict application of the non-aggression principle, if you have willfully decided to not have vaccines, you cannot then willfully go and infect others, and that would be a violation of that principle. So that's one of those situations that I brought up earlier, where it's a damned if you do, damned if you don't situation. Mm-hmm. But I cannot say in my heart of heart and my conscience that I would ever, sign off on mandatory vaccinations, because to me that just seems abhorrent.
All right. Well, I think that's all the questions we have for tonight. I want to thank you for joining me, Austin. It's been a good conversation.
Those were good, tough questions too. I appreciate it. They won't be able to say that you took it easy on me, for sure.
I was trying to be nice, but still firm. Megyn Kelly. Yeah.
Yeah.
All right, well, thank you again.
Thanks, Julie.
Best of luck to you.
I appreciate it. You have a good night.
You too.